Verse 608. If there is an object coming to exist, and yet is non-existent, by what law of causation is there the recognition of it? Things here are of mutual origination, and for this reason causation is declared. So if there's an object coming to exist and yet is non-existent, well, there are two things here. One is we experience a world of objects, and then there's a teaching which says such objects have no self-nature. They are not inherently real, or they have no inherent reality. So the question is, if they have no inherent reality, then how do we recognize them as individual objects? What causes us to recognize individual objects? Well, one of the reasons why it's taught that things have no substantial reality, they have no intrinsic reality, is because everything's interdependent. What's described in the next phrase as of mutual origination. Everything's a process. So this cup here, it's not a thing, it's actually a process. It's temporarily structured clay with paint on it, with a particular function, but at some point it's going to return to the elements. So this cup is actually shaped clay. It's a process. It's dependent on the earth element, as are our bodies. It's dependent on water and air as well, and certain combustion processes. So in this way our body too is born of the elements and will return to the elements. And if you believe that everything is made up of atoms, well, that's all everything is. It's just atoms doing their thing. Atoms are made up of the same basic components. So there isn't any real identity going on. It's just a dance of subatomic components. So that's one way of understanding the teaching that things have no intrinsic identity. That's okay up to a point. I mean, it's really the basis of Mahayana teachings. But what does this mean for us in terms of our own realization, in terms of our own enlightenment practice? We can nod in agreement. Yes, okay, fair enough. Things therefore have no intrinsic identity. But this is just an intellectual understanding. We need to look a little bit deeper and turn once again to what we can learn from the phenomenon of dreams. A dream has lots of different parts to it, lots of different components to it. So if I dream of a cup, is that cup still made up of clay? And if in this exciting dream I also dream of a mouse, a computer mouse, the mouse and the cup are in the same dream, then does it still make sense to talk about these objects as processes relating to basic elements? how in a dream is a cup differentiated from a mouse? Because they're both made up of dream stuff, aren't they? They're not made up of the elements, they're made up of dream stuff. Or can we argue that since everything is made up of atoms and their subatomic components, that even the objects in a dream are made up of atoms? Is the cup in my dream made up of atoms? I'm not sure even a hardcore physicalist would say so. They probably would actually, but it seems a little bit nonsensical. Are thoughts made up of atoms? What's the atomic structure of a thought? Well, if you're a physicalist, one who believes that everything has a physical explanation, I'd like to know the answer to that. What is the atomic composition of a thought? What is the atomic composition of the thought of a cup? What is the atomic composition of a dream of a cup? That way of thinking, that physicalist way of thinking, is quite limited. So this is what I'm going to understand here, though, about things arising of mutual origination. Because in the dream, the whole dream arises together. It isn't built up over time. The houses in the dream aren't built over time. They arise spontaneously, immediately, as do the cup and the computer mouse. So how does consciousness therefore differentiate between these two objects in a dream, a cup and a computer mouse? Well, it's almost as if they have to define themselves, and in doing so define the other. It's rather like the pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. A piece in a jigsaw puzzle has its own identity, and yet it has no meaning in itself. It only has meaning in relation to the rest of the picture. So perhaps the cup and the mouse are like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. They have no meaning in themselves, but they contribute to the overall tone of the dream, the overall tone picture of the dream. And then when we focus on these items, when consciousness focuses on one of these items, it creates a story, a history for that piece. It gives that piece an individuality. And in this way, causation is declared. As it says in the verse, causation. In this way, causation is declared. So the practice here is to realize that this is how consciousness works. We're not concerned with the story of everything being interdependent. What we need to realize is the dream nature of that which is being presented to us, and how consciousness creates a history for these objects that it becomes aware of. And what we want to do is to come back to the whole picture, the big picture. That big picture has a tone. That tone characterizes how we relate to our lives. That's what we need to bring into focus. And then we need to blow it wide open and look for what I described previously as the rainbow body. Because that tone is usually characterized by the habit energy of our moods. So once we find that tone, we go beyond it. Go beyond it to that which is aware of the tone, which is what is aware of these words right now. That's pure awareness. And in that awareness are these wonderful qualities, which are beautifully represented in the image of the rainbow body. Qualities of openness, of acceptance, of lovingness, of humor, of bliss, of bigness. It's so big. Of permanence. It's always here, always accessible. All these wonderful hues scintillating, presenting us with a heavenly cornucopia of possibilities.